name's Isaac. And this is my Toyota Tacoma 3-year ownership update. Let's get started. It's been 3 years, 37,408 miles, nearly 15,000 subscribers, and over 3 million views since I filmed the first video with my Tacoma. Now, when I was growing up, I didn't have cable, so I spent my time watching a lot of classic TV, the A-Team, Knight Rider, Magnum PI, and on all of those shows, the heroes always had a cool car. So I spent a lot of my childhood daydreaming of fighting crime with my own hero car. And all these years later, well, I don't fight nearly as much crime as I thought I would, but my truck Thumper has kind of become the hero truck of this channel, which I think is a perfect fit because I'm not sure how a show like Knight Rider, for example, would have gone over if Kit was a pickup truck.
All right, Mr. Knight, I'd like to introduce you to your new truck, Kit.
Hello, Michael.
Oh my goodness, you can talk? That's incredible. What else can you do?
I can tow things.
Okay.
I can also haul stuff in my bed.
Yeah, but do you have like machine guns?
I have trailer brake assist.
Okay. Love the idea. Could you just do this, but like a sports car? I don't really want this.
All right, ouch. I might not have machine guns, but I do have feelings.
But do you really? Yeah, I'm glad they stuck with the Trans Am. That was definitely the right move. Now, if you're new to the channel, I do cutaway jokes, as you can see, but I also like to keep a pretty regimented schedule when it comes to my yearly updates on the Tacoma. So I'm gonna start with the pros, then I'm gonna move to the cons, then I'm gonna talk about the modifications that I've added to the truck in the last year since my previous video, and I'm gonna wrap it up with a driving segment. So let's get started with the pros. The first thing I'd like to highlight is the bed of the truck. You know, the reason most people buy pickup trucks. Though I guess nowadays I'm not so sure. But my bed has held up fantastically, and I've used it. I landscape, and this has had loose rock, mulch, topsoil, branches, multiple lawnmowers, tons of equipment in the back. I've carried stoves, couches, innumerable couches. When you buy a pickup truck, you're just like, you're signing it. You're like, yep, I am gonna move so many couches. Maybe you're in the market for a pickup truck, but you haven't pulled the trigger yet, so you don't understand how often this is gonna happen to you. If that's the case, allow me to recommend my new book, Oh, the Couches You'll Move, available wherever all fake books are sold. When I initially bought the truck, I was unsure if the composite bed was gonna hold up or not. I didn't know if it was gonna crack easy or chip really deeply because composite beds are kind of new territory in the pickup truck world. But I'm happy to report that it's held up great. Continuing on with the pros, there's 2 things I'd like to talk about here in the interior. The first one is the interior itself. The build quality has held up really, really well over the last 3 years. The buttons don't stick at all, there's no fading or peeling, everything works, which is awesome, and you'd hope it would work after 3 years, but there's some vehicles that I've reviewed that have buttons that get stuck that are brand new. They haven't even been sold yet, and I put the heated seat button in and it gets stuck and I gotta pop it out. And so I just thought that was worth noting that everything has held up really well. It still feels firm. It hasn't really creaked or become rocky. The only thing I do have an issue with, and I mentioned this in my 2-year update, is that the driver's side door by the window switches is a little loose. Like you can kind of shake it a little bit, and I've noticed that's not only on my Tacoma. I've kind of tested that on other Tacomas that I've reviewed over the past year, and I've noticed all of them have that as well. So it seems to just be a Tacoma thing. I guess there's just not a clip in that section of the door, so it's a little fidgety. It's slightly annoying, but for the most part, the rest of this interior has held up phenomenally, no squeaks or breaks, so I can kind of cut them some slack in that element. The second thing I'd like to talk about is fuel economy. Now that's not something I normally talk about. I went back and I looked through my old videos to be like, okay, what am I updating? What am I not? And one thing I noticed is I don't really talk about the fuel economy on this truck, and that's a shame because I actually get pretty good fuel economy with, how many times can Isaac say fuel economy? With this truck. I get about 18 miles to the gallon on average, but recently I was on a road trip and I put cruise control on. It was going about 65, maybe 70, and I got almost 27 miles to the gallon, which is incredible for a mid-sized pickup truck. Now, like I said, I do average about 18, maybe 19 miles per gallon on the regular, but even having the capability to do 27 miles to the gallon is amazing, and it's absolutely worth mentioning because that is a huge pro on this truck. Now, moving to the cons list, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the underside of the truck. Recently, I went to go do an oil change, and I was surprised to find a pretty decent amount of surface rust on the frame. And this particular generation of Tacoma touted its, "We promise, this frame's not gonna rust through like the other ones," when they initially unveiled it. And so I guess I was surprised to see it so soon on this truck, especially since I take pretty good care of this. I wash it down after off-roading sessions. If there's gonna be salt on the road, I make sure to spray anti-rust protectant, but still, I guess at some point, some surface rust accrued. Thankfully though, I was able to sand it down and put some Rust-Oleum on it, so it's not a huge worry. More of a disappointment, I suppose, than a con. Also, it's worth noting I live in Pennsylvania, so we're kind of 100% salt on the roads 100% of the time. Now, before we move on to the second, and by far the worst con in the 3 years that I've owned this truck, I want to preface with some good news. You'll understand why in a minute. Now, if you've seen my 1-year ownership update on the truck, you'll know that I dropped some door panel clips into a part of the driver's side door that's inaccessible. And a lot of people offered me great advice on how to get them out or filling it with foam so they would stop rattling. But I'm happy to report that they just stopped rattling on their own. I don't know if they got stuck or something, but I haven't actually heard them rattling around in there for probably about 1.5 years. And then in my 2-year ownership update, I talked about how when I got up to highway speeds, I would hear this whistling kind of kazoo noise somewhere around the driver's side mirror. I could never pinpoint it. And it was just insane. It was very loud, very obnoxious. But I'm also happy to report that that noise has seemingly righted itself. And I haven't heard that in probably 6 or 7 months. That brings us to the bad news. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you guessed it, there's another noise. And this time, it's so much worse. One of the main contributing factors to make it so much worse is I know exactly where the noise is coming from. It's my serpentine belt. The problem is, I don't know why. Sometimes the serpentine belt loves to whine and screech on acceleration. Sometimes it just does it at idle. Then other times it doesn't do it at all. It just fixes itself magically until a week later it decides it's gonna be squealing again. Though I can't really complain a ton because as long as I crank my music up to about 100, I can't hear it. And if I can't hear it, then it's basically not an issue. I'm embarrassed. My truck sounds like a 1995 Geo Prism. In fact, when I pull up to 1995 Geo Prisms at stoplights, they actually squeal less than this does. Now, I'm sure a handful of you are running down to the comments section to say, "Did you try this?" or "What if you look at that?" And while I appreciate it, trust me, I have been through the ringer with this issue. Initially, I thought, well, maybe water was dripping on the belt and that was causing the noise. That doesn't seem to be it. I thought maybe there's a pulley that's loose or a bolt's not tightened and so the belt is off, and that doesn't appear to be it either. In fact, I found out that Toyota is even aware of this issue. There's a technical service bulletin because of it, and so I took it into my Toyota dealer, but they couldn't replicate the sound because, like I said, it goes off and on. It kind of chooses when it wants to squeal, and so Toyota wouldn't replace it unless it was currently making the sound. And so they said, just bring it in next time it starts doing that. But unfortunately, it's been inconvenient for my schedule when it's made the noise, and it only makes it for like 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And so I just haven't been able to get over there right now. Hopefully over this summer, if it happens again, which I'm sure it will, I'll be able to scoot over to my Toyota dealership and have this dealt with. But it's a really frustrating issue nonetheless that I feel like I shouldn't have to deal with on a nearly new truck. When it comes to mods on the truck, I actually haven't done a lot this year. I've probably removed as much as I've added, and pretty much everything is right here on the profile. Starting with the wheels and tires, I got new tires for it. They're Yokohama Geolanders 245/70R16s. And then I Plasti-Dipped my wheels black, and I painted the center Toyota logo red. I wanted to kind of mimic the TRD wheels without buying TRD wheels, because this isn't a TRD trim and I'm not a poser. And so I think they turned out pretty good with the Plasti-Dip. You know, there's some chipping here and there, and eventually I hope to repaint them in a more solid semi-gloss color. But for right now, I think they look really good, and I wanted to get tires with the white lettering. I think that contrasts really well. And then I Plasti-Dip the badges black, Tacoma, SR5, and the badges on the back. But that didn't turn out phenomenal, and I'm kind of a stickler for perfection. So what I ended up doing is I got these covers that go over your existing badges, and they just stick on there. Thus far, they've worked pretty well. The SR5 one on both sides is peeling a little bit, and I've only had these on for about 5 months. So that's a little disappointing, but these Tacoma ones have held on pretty good. And that's pretty much all the mods that I've done to the truck. What I've removed is I've taken off the mud flaps and the running boards. I just didn't think they worked well with the new look of the truck, and especially since, as I mentioned, I've been doing more off-roading, I wanted the clearance with the mud flaps because they were hard plastic, and so I just took those off, and then I was like, oh, well, this doesn't look too bad. And so then I also took the running boards off, and I think the stance of the truck, while it's not changed at all, looks a lot more aggressive, and it kind of gives the illusion of it being a little bit higher off the ground. And then I also removed the V6 badge from the back because as I was putting the new plastic covers on, I realized engine badges are kind of tacky, and so I took some dental floss and I took that one off, and it's just the 4x4 badge on the back. I think that cleans up the look a little bit there as well. And now it's time for the quintessential driving segment. Honestly, my truck has held up really well over the last 3 years, especially mechanically when driven. I love it. I love driving this truck. Even 3 years later, I get excited when I get to go on a road trip or I have to go run an errand because it's such a joy to drive. Yes, the seating position is not the best for very long road trips, but it suffices. And also, yes, the transmission does have a habit of jumping gears on acceleration, which can be fairly annoying. But both those grievances are things that I'm willing to overlook because it's so much fun. If you're in the market for one and you're like, I'm watching all these videos and I'm not sure, go test drive one, because that I think will be the factor for you, because I'm 5'9", and I know for me, this is a great size. I love how kind of cozy it is inside the cab, but I also know that if I was, let's say, 6'2", 6'3", I wouldn't be having a fun time in here. I know that for sure, especially with this model not having height adjustable seats. Definitely would not be having fun in here. So my encouragement to everyone is always go test drive it yourself. And if you don't like the Tacoma, that's okay. I'm not like a diehard Tacoma person. I'm a diehard car guy. And also the movie Die Hard. Love the movie Die Hard. Bruce Willis is great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're gonna do with the next generation Tacoma. I don't think I would trade my Tacoma for that one. I like the amount of technology that this has. And I think it's perfect. I'm perfectly comfortable where everything is with this truck. And even if the truck looks super cool and high tech, I don't need all those bells and whistles and the self-driving thing and the whatever. I don't need all that. And so, and I love this truck so much that I don't know if I could trade this even for another Tacoma. So, yeah. So that's going to wrap up my driving segment. Truck has handled great over the last 3 years, and I cannot say enough good things about it. I'd like to close this 3-year update with a little scripture reading. I'd like to read a psalm, but before I do, I want to give you a little backstory. When I do these videos, I always like to include a scripture at the end to encourage people and point them towards the Bible and God. And I like to get the context, and so I pick stuff out specifically. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do for this video. Now, in my personal life, I have been dealing with a lot of physical ailments. I've been feeling very under the weather recently. I think I have some sort of nerve damage. The doctors can't really figure it out right now. I have a lot of stuff coming up. You could pray for that if you'd think of it. And then on top of that, last week, I got the big C and I was bedridden. Not fun. Not fun at all. It really, I'm still getting over it. And during that time, I felt very alone. Not just physically alone, away from people. I felt apart from God. I messaged a friend and I said, I just feel so distant from God. I can pray, I can read the Bible, I just don't feel motivated to. And I said, how do you get back into being motivated to do that? And he said, I would read the Psalms. And so I opened my Bible, I opened right up to Psalm 23, and I started bawling my eyes out. And that's when I realized that Psalm 23 is what I need to read for you guys today. Because maybe someone else out there is watching this video because they're cooped up in their house, or maybe it's an emotional pain that they're going through and they haven't expressed it. Maybe they're angry at God. Maybe you're mad at God. Maybe you don't believe God exists. But Psalm 23 affirms that He's with you no matter what. This is a psalm of King David. It says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all of the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, I was always confused by the rod and staff part. How are those supposed to comfort me? Well, David's using an analogy to compare God to a shepherd, and a shepherd would use a rod to defend against predators. So he would protect his sheep with that rod, and with his staff he would guide them. And so David's saying he's comforted that God protects and guides him. I think that's pretty powerful, even through the valley of the shadow of death. And I'm sure many of us have had moments like that. Boy, this really feels like the valley of the shadow of death. Whether it's physical death, whether it's emotional pain, so turbulent that you just can't get it out of your head. But God's there. God's right there with you. So, I would encourage you to read the Bible. Pray to Him. You clicked on this Toyota Tacoma video probably because you're looking to buy one, or You just want to see my update, see how it's held up. But maybe you're going through something. And the Lord wants you to know that He's there and He's ready and waiting with His arms open wide. That's going to wrap up this video, guys. I'll see you next time.